They called my name, Melody Parker. And in that moment, everything stopped. The noise, the crowd, even my parents' whispering voices behind me. As I walked across that stage wearing the same black gown I bought secondhand from a thrift store, I saw their faces. Stunned, almost frozen. Because for the first time in my life, they were looking at me not as the forgotten daughter, but as someone they couldn't ignore. And the irony? They had no idea what I'd gone through to stand there. Music deepens, building quiet tension. You see, for as long as I can remember, my sister Clara was the family's pride, the golden child, the one who had potential, deserved everything, and needed support to succeed. And me? I was the quiet one, the one who didn't need help because I was strong. That's what they always told me. Like being strong was a punishment. When college came around, I thought maybe, things would finally be different. We both got accepted into great universities. Clara chose a fancy private college with dorms and meal plans. I got into a respected public university. Nothing fancy, but good enough. Then one night over dinner, Mom said something that would change everything. Clara's tuition bill came in today. We'll handle it, of course, I smiled, waiting for the part where she'd mention me. But she didn't. So I asked, "What about mine?" Dad looked up from his plate, shrugged, and said, "You're independent, Melody. You'll figure it out." That was it. No discussion, no offer, no explanation. Just a simple reminder. Clara gets help, Melody gets silence. Soft breath, pause. I remember lying awake that night, staring at the ceiling, trying not to cry. It wasn't even about the money. It was about what it represented. Favoritism so clear, so unapologetic, it carved a permanent mark inside me. But I made a promise to myself that night. One day they'll see. I'll make it on my own. And when I do, they'll realize who they ignored. So I worked 3 jobs. Waitressing in the mornings, tutoring in the afternoons, cleaning offices at night. Sometimes I'd get home so tired I'd fall asleep on the floor with my book still open. Meanwhile, Clara posted pictures of her college life online. Pool parties, shopping sprees, weekend getaways. All funded by Mom and Dad. Every like on her posts felt like another reminder of how invisible I was. Music rises. Subtle emotional buildup. But through every shift, every exam, every tear I swallowed back in silence, I grew stronger. And that strength carried me to this moment. Standing on this stage, cap in hand, while the dean announced, "And this year's valedictorian, Melody Parker." The audience erupted in applause. I looked at my parents, their jaws tight, eyes wide. And finally, I saw something new in their faces. Not pride, not guilt, but realization. They couldn't buy this moment for Clara. They couldn't fake it, control it, or explain it away. Because this was mine. But if you think this story is about revenge through success, you're only half right. Because what came after that graduation was far deeper and far more painful than any applause could heal. That day was just the beginning of the reckoning. And as you'll soon find out, sometimes the sweetest revenge comes wrapped in silence, not fury. I'm Melody Parker, and this is how my parents funded my sister's dreams, but taught me to build my own. Growing up, the difference between me and Clara wasn't just obvious. It was loud. She was sunshine. I was shadow. She walked into a room and it felt like the world stopped to applaud. I walked in, and people barely looked up. My parents adored her. Every report card she brought home was celebrated like a national achievement. "Clara got an A," they'd say, posting it on the fridge for everyone to see. When I got A's too? "Good job, Mel," they'd say, without even looking up from their phones. That's how it always was. 2 daughters, 2 completely different worlds. Mom would buy Clara new clothes before every semester, making sure she looked perfect. When I asked for something new, she'd tell me, "You don't need all that, Melody. You're more simple." Simple. That word became a label I could never peel off. soft background sounds, school chatter, laughter. I remember one time in high school, Clara forgot her homework and begged me to help her. So I stayed up all night finishing it for her. The next day, when she got an A on it, Mom hugged her. And me? She said, "See, Clara? Hard work pays off." I laughed. Quietly, of course, because if I didn't, I would have cried. Music shifts, slower tempo, emotional introspection. I wasn't jealous. At least that's what I told myself back then. It wasn't jealousy. It was confusion. I just couldn't understand why love had conditions. Why did Clara's mistakes get forgiven instantly, while mine became lessons? Why did she get celebrated for trying, and I got criticized for not being as good? By the time college came around, I had learned not to expect anything. But deep down, a part of me still hoped, just a little, that this time it would be fair. I was wrong. Slight tonal shift. Background fades to a faint ticking clock sound. When the acceptance letters arrived, Clara's was opened at the dinner table. Everyone gathered around her like it was Christmas morning. Mom gasped, "You got in?" "Oh my goodness, Clara," Dad said. "We're so proud of you, sweetheart." I waited. I had mine too, a thick envelope right there in my hand. But no one noticed. Finally, I said, "I got into mine too." Mom barely looked up. "That's great, honey." Then she turned back to Clara. That night, I opened my acceptance letter alone, sitting on my bed with my lamp flickering. I should have been happy. But instead, I felt this heavy ache in my chest. Like I had accomplished something invisible. Soft sigh. Background shifts to quiet instrumental hum. And then came the tuition talk. That's when everything shattered. When they told me, "You'll figure it out," I realized something crystal clear. Clara was the daughter they invested in. I was the daughter they expected to survive without help. That night, I didn't cry. I applied for part-time jobs instead. I filled out every scholarship form I could find. I cut down on everything. Clothes, food, even sleep. If independence was what they wanted from me, I'd give it to them. But on my terms. Meanwhile, Clara called home almost every week asking for money. "Mom, I need rent." "Dad, my laptop broke. Can you transfer a little extra?" We're going on a trip, and they always sent it, without question. I'd overhear them say, "Clara just needs support right now. She's under a lot of pressure." Pressure. Funny word, isn't it? Because working 3 jobs, managing full-time classes, and eating instant noodles for dinner wasn't pressure. It was just my responsibility. But here's the thing about being invisible. You learn to move quietly and work twice as hard. I started excelling. Top of my classes, professors praising my work, even getting recognition for my research projects. I didn't tell my parents because they never asked. They didn't even know I had been nominated for a national academic award. But Clara, they flew out to visit her campus for a family weekend. I watched their pictures online, matching shirts, smiling for the camera, and realized something that burned deep in my chest. It wasn't that they couldn't love me. It was that they chose not to see me. But that silence wouldn't last forever, because the world has a funny way of shifting when you least expect it. And soon, the balance between the golden child and the forgotten one was about to change. Permanently. It was sophomore year when my body finally started showing signs of exhaustion. 3 jobs, full-time classes, and late-night study sessions had turned me into a ghost walking through campus. Some nights I'd sit at the library and stare at my reflection in the dark glass. Pale skin, sunken eyes, cracked hands from washing dishes in the cafeteria kitchen. That reflection was a stranger, but she was strong. Still, the loneliness was crushing. One evening, my phone buzzed. It was a family group text. Clara had posted photos of her college gala. She was glowing in a new designer dress, laughing with friends. Mom had commented, "Our star girl. So proud of you, sweetheart." Dad added a dozen heart emojis. I stared at the screen, my fingers tightening around the phone. I typed something, then deleted it. because no matter what I said, it wouldn't matter. They weren't talking to me. They were celebrating her. Again. Music fades in. Slow piano chords filled with tension. But then came a phone call that changed everything. It was Mom. "Mel, could you send a little money to help with Clara's books? She's having a tough semester." For a moment, I couldn't even breathe. "Wait," I said, my voice trembling. "You want me to send her money?" Mom sighed like I was being unreasonable. "Well, you've been working, haven't you?" "Clara's focusing on her studies." You know how hard that is. I wanted to laugh. "Hard? Try working double shifts while memorizing anatomy terms at 3 a.m. But I didn't laugh. I just said, "I'll think about it." Then I hung up and cried for the first time in months. Not because of the money, but because I finally realized something. In their eyes, my effort didn't make me worthy. It made me useful. Sound of clock ticking, representing the slow realization sinking in. That night, I decided I was done begging for fairness. If they couldn't see my worth now, I'd make sure one day they couldn't ignore it. From that point on, everything changed. I stopped comparing myself to Clara. Instead, I started competing with the version of me that still needed their approval. I picked up more hours at work, saved every extra dollar, and when I wasn't working or studying, I was planning my future. A future they wouldn't be part of. Background sound, flipping pages, keyboard typing. Then, one weekend, I came home for a short visit. It had been months since I'd last seen them. The house looked the same. Photos of Clara everywhere, her framed diploma on the hallway wall. Mine? Nowhere. I greeted them with a smile, pretending not to notice. But inside, my heart was a storm. At dinner, Clara casually mentioned she might take a gap year, maybe travel, maybe start a blog. Mom and Dad exchanged supportive smiles. "That's wonderful, sweetie," Dad said. "We'll help with the expenses." I stared at my plate, holding back the frustration boiling inside me. "Dad," I said finally, "I've been accepted into a research internship. It's competitive, and I'll need to move closer to the city." He looked up, confused. "Does that mean you'll quit your job?" "Just one of them," I said. "I'll still work weekends." Mom frowned. "Are you sure you can handle that? You don't want to burn yourself out." I almost laughed again. Now they cared about burnout? I wanted to say, where was that concern when I was working 3 jobs to survive? But instead, I said, "I'll be fine." The next few months were a blur of work, research, and pushing through exhaustion. Every small success felt like a secret victory. Not against them, but for me. Soft motivational undertone. Faint piano mixed with heartbeat rhythm. Then, one evening, I got a text from Clara. "Hey sis, guess what? Mom and Dad are throwing me a graduation party next month. It's going to be huge." My stomach twisted. Her graduation wasn't even before mine. We finished the same year. But somehow they hadn't mentioned anything about mine. I waited a day, hoping they'd bring it up. They didn't. Finally, I asked, "Are you doing anything for my graduation?" Mom's reply was short. "Oh, honey, we didn't know if you wanted that sort of thing." You're always so independent. That word again. The perfect excuse to exclude me. That night, I sat in my tiny apartment, surrounded by textbooks and half-empty coffee cups. And I made a promise to myself. I would walk across that stage alone if I had to. And when I did, I'd make sure that moment would mean something no one could take away from me. No pity, no applause, no validation. Just me. And the realization that I didn't need anyone's permission to be proud of myself. That silence, it wasn't loneliness anymore. It was freedom. Graduation morning, after years of endless shifts, sleepless nights, and silent tears, the day had finally come. The mirror in my dorm room reflected a face I barely recognized. Tired? Yes, but determined. My cap was slightly crooked, the robe a little wrinkled, but to me, it was perfect. because I'd earned every single crease with my own blood and willpower. I checked my phone. Nothing. No message from Mom, Dad, or Clara. Not even a good luck. Soft instrumental music plays, bittersweet, with a hint of triumph. I remember taking a deep breath, forcing a smile, and whispering to myself, "This is your day, Melody. They don't need to be proud of you. You're proud of yourself." As I walked toward the ceremony hall, my mind flickered through memories. Washing dishes late at night, taking notes half asleep, standing in the cold waiting for buses that never came. And now, this was the moment all of that pain had led to. The auditorium was packed. Families cheered, waved banners, held bouquets. Everywhere I looked, parents hugged their children, tears of pride glistening in their eyes. I took a seat alone. When they called my name, my heart pounded like thunder. Melody Parker, Bachelor of Science, summa cum laude. Applause echoed, but none of it came from people I loved. Still, I smiled wider than ever before, because this applause wasn't for my family. It was for me. Sound effect. Applause fades into slow cinematic heartbeat. After the ceremony, I walked outside, still buzzing with adrenaline. That's when I heard someone call my name. Melody? It was my Aunt Grace, my mom's sister. I hadn't seen her in years. "Oh my goodness, you look incredible," she said, hugging me tight. "I didn't expect to see you here. I thought you'd be with your family at Clara's ceremony." My smile froze. "Clara's what?" She looked at me, puzzled. "Her graduation ceremony. It was this morning, too. Didn't you know? It felt like the world stopped spinning. They had gone to her graduation, on the same day as mine. They hadn't even told me." Aunt Grace's smile faded as she realized what she'd just revealed. "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. I thought you knew." I swallowed hard, trying to stay composed. "Yeah," I whispered, forcing a laugh. I guess they were too busy celebrating. But inside, I was shattering. Every single late night, every missed meal, every ounce of energy I poured into proving my worth. And still, I was invisible. Aunt Grace offered to take me out for lunch, and though I appreciated her kindness, I declined. I needed space. I needed silence. I walked to the bus stop, the wind brushing against my face like it was trying to comfort me. And for the first time, I didn't cry. I didn't beg for answers. I didn't even text them. Because something inside me had changed. They hadn't forgotten. They had chosen not to come. And that realization didn't break me. It set me free. Soft shift on piano gives way to steady, empowering strings. When I got back to my apartment, I took off the gown, folded it neatly, and placed it on the table. Next to it, I laid down my student loan statement, the receipts from my 3 jobs, and the first offer letter from a company that had just hired me, a top research firm in Boston. That was my real celebration. My revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It was success. The kind that spoke for itself. Mom. "Hey, sweetheart. Sorry we missed your ceremony. Things were hectic today. Let's celebrate later, okay?" I stared at the screen, my hand trembling, not with sadness, but with clarity. I typed, "Don't worry." I already did. Then I set the phone down and smiled, a calm, unshakable smile. That was the last message I sent them for a long time. That night, I opened my window and looked out at the city lights. For years, I'd thought revenge meant payback, proving them wrong, making them regret their choices. But now, I understood the truth. Revenge isn't about showing others their mistakes. It's about proving to yourself that you never needed them to begin with. I whispered into the quiet night. "You did it, Melody. You made it, all on your own. And for the first time in my life, that was enough." It had been 6 quiet months since graduation. 6 months of peace, progress, and no contact with my family. I'd settled into my new job at the research firm. Long hours, yes, but fulfilling ones. My coworkers respected me. My manager valued me, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel invisible. My mornings were simple: coffee, a quick jog, a little music before work. No drama, no guilt, no constant reminder that I wasn't enough. Soft jazz fades in, symbolizing new beginnings. Until one Saturday morning, there was a knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, my heart skipped a beat. Mom stood there. Behind her, Dad held a small gift bag. For a second, I just stared. Part of me frozen in disbelief. The same parents who hadn't texted, hadn't called, hadn't even shown up for my graduation were now standing on my doorstep. "Melody," Mom said, her voice cautious, almost rehearsed. "Can we come in?" I hesitated, but eventually nodded. They stepped inside, looking around the small apartment. It was clean but modest, everything I had built by myself. Mom smiled faintly. "You've made a nice place here." I folded my arms. "What brings you here?" Dad cleared his throat, shifting uncomfortably. We wanted to talk. About everything. Everything. That word carried the weight of years of silence, favoritism, and pain. Low ambient tension sound builds beneath dialogue. Mom sat down, her hands clasped tightly. "We realized we haven't been fair to you. We should have been there on your graduation day. We just didn't know how to handle everything with Clara at the same time." Her tone was soft, but her words were hollow. I'd heard apologies before, the kind that made them feel better, not me. I stayed quiet. Dad spoke next. "Your aunt called us after the ceremony. She said you were hurt. We didn't mean to—" I cut him off, calm but firm. "You didn't mean to forget my graduation? Or you didn't mean to choose hers over mine?" Silence. Mom's eyes watered. "Mel, it wasn't about choosing—" "Yes, it was." My voice cracked slightly, but I held it steady. "It always was." Music fades, leaving raw silence. They both looked down, guilt flickering across their faces. "I worked 3 jobs," I continued. "I paid every dollar of my tuition myself. I missed holidays, birthdays, sleep, all while watching you pour everything into Clara. And even then, I told myself maybe one day you'd see me. But you didn't. You never did." Tears welled up in Mom's eyes. Dad reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "I'm not angry anymore," I said quietly. "Just done." For a moment, the only sound was the ticking of the wall clock. Then Mom spoke, her voice trembling. "Melody, we came because we wanted to make things right. Your father and I want to help pay off your student loans." I froze. That offer, the thing I'd dreamed of hearing years ago, now felt meaningless. "I already paid them off," I said flatly. "With my own money." Mom's lips parted, speechless. "That's incredible," Dad said softly. "We're proud of you, Mel." I met his gaze, and for the first time, I didn't feel small. Their words no longer held power over me. After a moment, Mom took out the gift bag and handed it to me. Inside was a photo. Me and Clara as kids, covered in paint, grinning ear to ear. On the back, Mom had written, "We should have seen both our daughters light equally." A lump formed in my throat, but I didn't cry. "Thank you," I said simply, setting the photo on the table. "I hope you really mean that." They nodded, unsure what else to say. When they stood to leave, Mom hugged me. Hesitant, fragile, like she was afraid I'd vanish. "I'm sorry, Mel." Truly, I didn't say it's okay, because it wasn't, and pretending it was would only reopen old wounds. "I forgive you," I said instead. "But forgiveness doesn't mean going back." She nodded, understanding. Finally. As the door closed behind them, I exhaled deeply. The silence that filled the room wasn't heavy anymore. It was peace. That night, I looked at the photo again. And for the first time, I didn't feel pain looking at Clara's face. I felt gratitude. Because without the unfairness, I might never have found my strength. My revenge had never been about making them regret it. It was about building a life where their regret didn't matter. And in that moment, I realized I'd already won. The morning after my parents' visit felt different. The air was lighter, my thoughts quieter. For years, I'd carried their approval like a weight, constantly measuring myself against what they gave Clara. But now, for the first time, I didn't need that approval. I didn't need their validation. Because I'd finally built something stronger. Self-respect. Soft acoustic guitar begins, slow, reflective. Work was thriving. I'd recently been promoted to team lead at the research firm, the youngest in my department. My manager called me unstoppable. My colleagues called me the quiet storm. And I liked that, because I was quiet. But everything I did now carried the power of every battle I'd fought alone. One afternoon, while reviewing project data, my coworker, Lena, looked up and said, "Mel, how do you stay so calm under pressure?" "You never lose your focus." I smiled. "If you've survived emotional chaos," I said, "a few deadlines can't scare you." She laughed, but I meant every word. Sound effect. Soft keyboard clicks, distant office chatter fades in and out. Outside of work, I started doing things I'd never had the time or emotional space for. I joined a yoga class. I read again. I even started volunteering at a local mentorship program for underprivileged students. Kids who reminded me of the version of me that once thought she wasn't enough. One girl, about 15, came up to me after a session and said, "You really paid for your own college? Without any help?" I nodded. Every cent. Her eyes widened. "That's amazing." I smiled and told her something I wish someone had told me years ago. It's not amazing because it was easy. It's amazing because I didn't stop. Music swells softly, emotional but empowering. The more I helped others, the more I healed parts of myself I didn't know were still broken. But one day, I got a message that stirred old emotions. It was from Clara. "Hey, Mel. I know things have been weird between us. Can we talk?" I hesitated. For a long time, I'd built my peace by keeping distance. But something inside me, not guilt, but growth, said I should hear her out. We met at a small cafe near the park. When she walked in, I noticed how tired she looked, the same fatigue I once carried. "Hey," she said softly. "Hey." There was an awkward pause before she spoke again. "I wanted to say I'm sorry," she said, "for not standing up for you. For letting Mom and Dad treat you the way they did." I stared at her. Not with anger, but curiosity. She continued, "I always thought you were the strong one. That you didn't need help. They'd talk about how independent you were, and I believed it. But now that I'm on my own, I get it." It's hard, her voice cracked. "I'm struggling, Mel. And now I realize you carried that kind of struggle for years, alone." Piano fades in, emotional tone, gentle and raw. I took a deep breath and said, "You were their favorite, Clara. But I don't blame you. We were both playing parts in their script. You, the golden child. Me, the invisible one." Tears filled her eyes. "I never wanted it to be like that." "I know," I said, "but now we get to write our own stories. No favoritism, no resentment, just honesty." She nodded, wiping her tears. We sat in silence for a moment, not the awkward kind, but the healing kind. Then she smiled faintly. "You really made it, Mel. I'm proud of you." And for the first time in my life, I believed she meant it. We hugged before parting ways. As she walked away, I realized something profound. Forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation, but sometimes it opens the door to a future that isn't poisoned by the past. Later that night, I looked at my reflection in the mirror. The same reflection that once stared back at me from the library window years ago. Only now, that face looked peaceful. I whispered, "You did it. You rebuilt your life without them. And now you're finally living for you. Soft wind sound, symbol of release. I picked up my journal and wrote 3 lines that summed up everything I'd learned. Sometimes the people you love will never see your worth until you stop needing them to. The best revenge is success that doesn't demand an audience. Healing isn't about proving anyone wrong. It's about proving to yourself that you were right to keep going. And as I closed the journal, I felt it deep in my soul. The story wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about rebirth. The moment had finally arrived. The one I'd dreamed of through every sleepless night, every double shift, every tear that had fallen into my textbooks. Graduation day. The air inside the auditorium buzzed with pride. Parents waved their phones, capturing photos, faces beaming with joy. I stood near the back of the line in my cap and gown, holding my diploma case tightly. All around me, families shouted names, clapped, and called out congratulations. But I knew mine wouldn't be among those cheers. My parents weren't here. Clara wasn't here. And yet, for the first time, I didn't feel empty. I felt free. Soft instrumental, gentle piano and strings rising slowly. As I walked across the stage to receive my diploma, my heart pounded with quiet triumph. The dean shook my hand and said, "Melody Parker, Bachelor of Science, summa cum laude." The audience clapped politely, but in my head, I heard a louder sound. The echo of every rejection, every, "We can't afford to help you," every, "You're on your own." This applause wasn't for them. It was for me. After the ceremony, while others posed with flowers and family, I stepped outside. The sunlight hit my face like a gentle reminder that I'd survived storms and still found warmth. Sound. Birds, chatter, soft camera clicks in the background. That's when I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Melody?" I turned. It was Aunt Linda. Her expression was soft, proud. "You did it. I told them they'd regret missing this." I blinked, stunned. "You came?" She nodded. "Of course." "Someone had to clap for you." I smiled, tears threatening. "Thank you." She handed me a small wrapped box. Inside was a bracelet, silver, engraved with one word, "Enough." "You've always been enough, sweetheart," she said. They just never saw it. Those words cracked something open in me. Not pain, but peace. Music softens, introspective tone. Later that evening, as I sat on my small apartment balcony overlooking the city, I reflected on what success really meant. It wasn't the diploma. It wasn't the promotion or the pay raise. It was this, sitting here in stillness, without bitterness, without hunger for revenge, and realizing I was finally content. I'd once believed success needed witnesses, that it had to be seen to be real. But I was wrong. True success doesn't need an audience. It's the quiet satisfaction that blooms inside you when you know you've done right, even when no one claps. Scene shift, sound of city at night, distant cars, faint hum of life. Weeks later, something unexpected happened. I got a call from my university dean. "Melody, your research project caught attention from a nonprofit that funds community education programs. They want to offer you a leadership position." I was speechless. "Me?" He laughed. "Yes, you. You've earned it." That's how my next chapter began. Not in bitterness, but in purpose. I took the role and poured my energy into helping students who reminded me of my past self, those who had ambition but no support system. Every success story from my students felt like reclaiming a piece of my own story. One evening, after hosting a scholarship event, a student hugged me and said, "You believed in me when no one else did." I smiled and whispered, "That's what someone once forgot to do for me." I won't make that mistake again. Soft violin plays in the background. Tone of redemption. Months passed, and the organization began gaining recognition. We were featured in local media, praised for empowering self-funded students. Ironically, that's when my parents reached out again. A simple message. "Proud of you. Can we talk?" I stared at the text for a long time. Once upon a time, those words would have made my heart leap. Now they just existed. I didn't reply right away. I took a deep breath, reread the message, and then typed, "Thank you. I hope you're both well." That was it. No anger, no sarcasm, no longing, just boundaries. Calm, firm, and peaceful. Because revenge, I'd learned, isn't about getting even. It's about getting better, without losing yourself in the process. Cinematic swell, strings and light percussion building up. The next day, I stood before a new group of scholarship students. Some looked nervous, others excited. I smiled at them and said, "I want you to remember something. The world doesn't always reward fairness, but it always rewards persistence. The moment you stop waiting for others to lift you, that's when you start to rise." They listened, wide-eyed. I saw hope in their faces, the same hope I once carried quietly through long nights of work and study. As I spoke, I realized my story wasn't just mine anymore. It was a blueprint, proof that endurance can outshine favoritism, that strength built in solitude can become a light for others. Sound fades, audience applause echoes softly, mixing with the final chords of piano and strings. That night, as I closed my laptop after reviewing scholarship applications, I whispered one last thought into the quiet room. They chose her future for her. I built mine myself, and that was the truest victory of all. There are moments when silence says more than words ever could. And then there are moments when you have to let the words spill out, even if no one will ever read them. That night, months after graduation, I sat by my window with a pen in hand, writing a letter I never planned to send. The paper stayed blank for a long time before I finally began. "Dear Mom, dear Dad," I paused, staring at the words. They looked heavy, foreign, like they belonged to someone else's story. I took a deep breath and kept going. I used to wonder what was wrong with me. Why I wasn't the one you bragged about, the one you invested in, the one you looked at with pride. For years, I thought maybe I didn't try hard enough to earn your love. But now I know the truth. Love shouldn't be earned. It should be given freely. My hand trembled as I wrote, but my heart felt steady. You taught me something, though not in the way you meant to. You taught me independence. You taught me strength. You taught me how to stand up without anyone holding me. And for that, I am grateful I stopped. A small smile tugged at the corner of my lips, the kind that comes not from joy, but from release. I forgive you. Not because you asked for it, but because I refuse to carry the weight of your choices any longer. Clara may have had your money, but I had to build myself from dust. And I learned what real value is. Tears dripped onto the page, small circles of clarity. You missed my graduation. You missed the moment I proved to myself that I was capable of anything. But maybe you needed to. Maybe if you'd been there, I would have looked to you for approval instead of realizing I didn't need it. I leaned back, exhaling slowly. The rain outside had softened to a drizzle. I hope one day you'll understand the pain your silence caused. I hope you realize that favoritism isn't love. It's neglect wearing a mask. Then my tone shifted. Not bitter, but resolute. But please don't mistake this letter for hatred. I don't hate you. I just learned to love myself enough to stop begging for scraps. And that's the kind of peace I wouldn't trade for anything. I signed it. With love that once begged but no longer waits, melody, sound, gentle folding of paper, drawer sliding shut. I tucked the letter away in a wooden box beside my bed, a quiet burial for years of unspoken words. For the first time, I slept soundly. The next morning, I woke up early, made coffee, and stared out at the sunrise. The city skyline glowed with gold. New light for a new chapter. I didn't need closure from them anymore. The closure had come from within. Soft piano melody begins, tone of healing and strength. Weeks passed peacefully. My work grew, my projects expanded, and my life started to feel whole. Until one afternoon, an email appeared in my inbox. The subject line read, "We saw your interview." It was from my mother. My chest tightened as I opened it. Inside was a single paragraph. "We watched your story on the Education Network. We didn't realize how much we'd hurt you. I know it's late, but we're sorry. We're proud of who you've become." I read it over and over. It wasn't everything, but it was something. Soft emotional pause. Music lingers. I didn't reply right away. Instead, I smiled. A calm, quiet smile that didn't need validation. I didn't need an apology to heal, but receiving one reminded me of how far I'd come. Sometimes the best revenge really is peace. Not the kind that comes after a fight, the kind that settles in when you finally stop fighting. A week later, I stood in front of a small classroom filled with young adults. First-generation students just starting their college journey. I told them my story, not to gain sympathy, but to show them that the power to change their story was already in their hands. I ended my talk with this. Your family might not always see your worth, but that doesn't mean you have none. Your validation won't come from applause, it comes from effort. And when your day of triumph arrives, stand tall, even if no one claps, because your worth isn't up for debate. The class erupted into applause. Not for me, but for themselves. And that sound, that collective energy of people reclaiming their hope, was the loudest victory of all. Scene transition, montage of Melody walking home, smiling at passing students, placing her graduation photo in a frame on her desk. As the evening sky deepened into indigo, I whispered one final truth to myself. They gave me silence. I turned it into strength. 3 years had passed since graduation. 3 years of silence, peace, and growth. I'd built a life I could finally be proud of. A cozy apartment, a fulfilling job helping young women find scholarships, and a sense of confidence I once thought I'd never have. But life has a strange way of circling back to unfinished stories. That morning, as I was finishing a workshop on financial literacy for students, my phone buzzed with a name I hadn't seen in years. Clara. For a second, I froze. The same sister whose entire degree my parents had paid for. The same sister who never once asked how I was doing while I worked 3 jobs to survive. I hesitated, then opened the message. "Mel, I'm in town. Mom and Dad are hosting a small dinner. They want you to come." Please, my heart thudded once, hard. I could almost hear the ghost of my younger self. The girl who used to chase their approval, whispering, "Maybe they've changed." But the older version of me, the one who'd rebuilt herself piece by piece, stayed quiet and steady. I typed back 2 words. "I'll come." Transition. Sound of a car engine starting, soft instrumental humming in the background. The drive to my parents' house felt like traveling through time. Same winding streets, same oak trees, same feeling in my chest. Except this time, I wasn't the same person arriving. When I parked outside, the porch light flickered like a nervous heartbeat. Through the window, I could see laughter. Familiar silhouettes moving around the dining table. I took a deep breath and knocked. Mom opened the door, startled, then smiled. Awkwardly, but sincerely. "Melody," she said softly. "You look wonderful." I nodded. "Hi, Mom." Dad appeared behind her, older, thinner. His eyes met mine, and for a moment neither of us spoke. Then he simply said, "It's good to see you." We sat down for dinner. The same table I'd once sat at in silence while my parents bragged about Clara's accomplishments now felt neutral. Clara sat across from me, her smile tight but kind. "Mel," she said, "I watched your talk online, the one at the scholarship event. You were incredible." I blinked, surprised. "You watched it?" She nodded. "Yeah, I guess I didn't realize how hard you had it back then." Her voice cracked a little, and for the first time I saw guilt in her eyes. "I didn't mean to make you feel small," she continued. I thought everything came easy for you. You always seemed strong, that line hit deep. Because being strong was never a choice. It was a necessity. Before I could respond, Dad spoke. "We saw that interview too," he said. "It opened our eyes. We can't change the past, but we'd like to make things right." I looked at each of them, faces that had once represented pain, now softened by time and humility. "Dad," I said calmly, "you don't owe me anything. I'm not here for apologies or repayment. I'm here because I want peace." For all of us, Mom reached for my hand. Her grip trembled. "I'm proud of you, Melody. I know we never said it enough." For a second, the world stood still. The girl who once begged for those words had finally heard them. And she didn't cry. She just smiled. Soft instrumental music builds, tone of relief and quiet closure. Dinner passed gently. No accusations, no tension, just conversation. We talked about my work, Clara's life, even old memories that once hurt too much to mention. It wasn't perfect, but it was healing. After dessert, I stepped outside alone to breathe. The same garden where I'd once sat crying after being told I wasn't as bright as Clara now shimmered under the glow of fairy lights. I whispered to the night, "I made it." And I didn't need anyone's permission to. Behind me, I heard footsteps. Clara again. She stood quietly for a while before saying, "I wish I had your strength." I smiled. "You don't need mine. You just need yours." She nodded, her eyes glistening. "I'm trying." We hugged, awkwardly at first, then tighter, longer, like two people who finally stopped pretending to be enemies. Scene transition. Weeks later, morning light over Melody's apartment, a steaming cup of coffee on her desk. I got a text from Dad that morning. "Family brunch this Sunday?" "Your favorite, pancakes." I laughed softly, setting the phone down. Revenge had never been the goal. What I wanted, what I needed, was recognition, respect, closure. And somehow, life had given me all three. As I looked at the framed photo of my graduation on the shelf, I realized something. The greatest revenge isn't proving them wrong. It's living so well they have no choice but to rethink who you are. So I sent back one final text. "I'll bring the syrup." Some people think revenge means destruction, tearing down the people who hurt you. But I learned something far different. True revenge isn't loud. It isn't cruel. It's quiet, steady, and unshakable. It's waking up one day and realizing you no longer care about proving your worth to people who never saw it. It's when peace feels better than validation. That's the moment you win. When I stood on my own graduation stage, I didn't know the kind of strength I was building. I just knew I had to survive. But survival slowly turned into purpose. And purpose? That's where healing begins. My story isn't about resentment, it's about recognition. Recognition that you are allowed to stop chasing love that hurts to reach. Recognition that you don't have to shrink to make someone else feel bigger. I learned that you can forgive people without reopening the door they closed on you. You can honor your journey without inviting everyone back into it. Soft pause. The sound of a clock ticking gently. Because here's the truth no one tells you. Healing doesn't happen when they apologize. Healing happens when you stop waiting for one. Months after the reunion, my parents and I began to rebuild small pieces of what was lost. We text sometimes, share photos, exchange updates. Nothing grand, nothing cinematic. Just the quiet rhythm of people trying to understand each other again. And that's okay. Not every relationship needs a perfect ending. Some just need peace. My sister Clara and I still talk occasionally. She's different now. Softer, humbler. We laugh about things we used to fight over. It feels like we both outgrew the version of ourselves that envy once controlled. But sometimes, I still think about that young girl. The one scrubbing dishes at midnight. Exhausted after working her third shift just to afford tuition. I think about how alone she felt. And if I could talk to her now, I'd tell her, "You were never weak. You were building something no one else could see yet." Music deepens. emotional, cinematic tone. Because that's what pain does. It doesn't just scar you, it shapes you. And someday those scars will remind you not of what broke you, but of what rebuilt you. Sound of a page turning. Melody's voice softens, intimate tone. If you're watching this and you've ever felt invisible in your own family, this story is for you. Maybe your parents favored someone else. Maybe you worked harder, loved deeper, gave more, and it was never enough. But listen carefully. You are not defined by who noticed your effort. You are defined by the strength it took to keep going when no one did. You don't need a family's approval to become someone powerful. You just need your own courage to take that first step, alone, if you must. And when you do, when you finally stand tall in the world you built with your own hands, that's when you'll feel it. The calm after the storm, the quiet pride that whispers, I made it, and I did it without them. So if you've ever been overlooked, ignored, or replaced, this is your sign to stop waiting for their applause. Start clapping for yourself. Because sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't payback, it's presence. The kind that glows quietly, reminding the world that you rose despite it all. If this story resonated with you, take a moment right now to subscribe. Not because we asked, but because stories like this deserve a space in your life. Every week, we share real tales of injustice, healing, and quiet strength. Stories that might not go viral for drama, but for truth. And if you've ever experienced something similar, share it in the comments. You have no idea who might need to read your words today. Weeks later, I finally found myself walking across my old college campus again. The buildings looked the same, but I didn't. There was a plaque by the library. It read, "Donated by Alumni Support Fund." I smiled quietly. That fund? It was one I helped start. A scholarship program for students who don't have family support. The first award went to a girl named Jada, working nights, studying business, just like I once did. When she received it, she hugged me and whispered, "Thank you for believing in people like me." And in that moment, I realized something powerful. The greatest revenge isn't just success. It's creating opportunities for others who are walking the same painful road you once traveled. It's turning your wounds into someone else's hope. Life will never be perfectly fair, but you always have a choice. To repeat the story that hurt you, or to rewrite it with strength. I chose the second option. And I hope you do too. Because in the end, revenge doesn't need noise or chaos. It just needs silence, peace, and growth so undeniable it echoes louder than any apology ever could. Pause. Soft wind sound fades in, closing line whispered. I'm Melody Parker, and this was my story. Sometimes the best revenge is becoming who they said you could never be.